It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Tuesday, February 25th. I'm Wendy Corr, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily newsroom, brought to you by the Wyoming Senior Olympics, thanking the participants, volunteers, supporters, and sponsors of the February Winter Games in Pinedale. Visit WyomingSeniorOlympics.com. Well, those walking through the Wyoming Capitol Rotunda on Monday had to be careful not to step on a hand or foot. That was because around 20 protesters held a die-in at the Capitol, an event protesting House Bill 172, legislation that would ban all gun-free zones in Wyoming. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson spoke to the organizer of the protest, who said the purpose of the event was to put pressure on the governor to veto the bill, an action he took to an almost identical bill last year.
A collection of about 20 students came to the event and lay down on the floor of the Wyoming Capitol for about 30 minutes. They didn't really say much of anything while they were laying there on the floor, but some of them were wearing shirts with red paint splotched on them to kind of symbolize the blood that would result from a mass shooting event. I spoke to the event organizer, Sophia Gomelski, who's a student at the University of Wyoming, and she said the students want their voices to be heard. They feel like they've been left out and ignored during discussions on this bill. Gordon came out and spoke to Gomelski during the event for a few minutes. Gomelski told me that what she said was that the governor kind of warned her that even if he vetoes the bill, he could be overridden by the legislature.
The bill is on the governor's desk for consideration after passing through the House and Senate. He'll have until Tuesday to veto it, sign it, or let it pass into law without his signature. A Worland man is being charged with cruelty to animals, among other citations, after allegedly shooting his 7-month-old puppy 6 times. Axel, a border collie mix, is recovering after being shot by his owner, 59-year-old Donald Wright. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that Wright was charged last week with cruelty to animals, using a gun to commit a felony, property destruction, 2 counts of breach of peace, and 3 counts of stalking in connection with Axel's shooting.
The allegation is that the dog either killed some of his chickens or tore up his medication, or both, as he later told police. And he is accused of shooting it 6 times in an attempt to put it down, but multiple witnesses said he was drunk and raging at the time. And so then he goes back in the house and he doesn't finish off the dog. One of the women living in the house next door found the dog under a porch and took it to the vet. So he didn't know that in the morning, and the allegation is that he was still raging and demanding this dog and yelling at the women.
Though his front leg was shot, veterinarian professionals believe the dog will get to keep it. A bullet is still lodged in his hind leg, and he has 2 bullets still in his shoulder and another in his chest. Well, at least one Wyoming U.S. Postal Service worker doesn't trust the outlook for Wyoming mail under recently revised Delivering for America plans. Neither does U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, who's wasted no time in filing additional legislation that will prohibit closing even small post offices without substantial prior notice. Cowboy State Daily's Renee Jean reports that her latest bill will require the USPS to notify the public that it plans to close or consolidate any sorting, distribution, or processing facilities at least 2 months before taking action.
She wants a 60-day notice for all postal services that are being consolidated, closed, basically to give residents time to appeal a decision to the Postal Regulatory Commission. This is sparked by just how Delivering for America rolled out. We didn't get adequate notice. In some cases, people didn't realize there was a deadline to register for that virtual forum. They didn't get to speak. Wyoming was a squeaky wheel, and we got some grease. But there are lots of other communities, including some capitals of different states, that are going to have slower mail than other cities within their state.
Delivering for America proposed cutting costs by reducing mail services to locations 50 miles or more from a regional processing and distribution center. Wyoming will still not be getting a distribution center, and all of its communities are 50 miles or more away. Sheridan broke a nearly century-old temperature record Thursday, reaching minus 27. On Sunday, the high in Sheridan was 58 degrees. That's an 85-degree swing in 4 days. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that the National Weather Service doesn't track this kind of record, but it's a tremendous swing.
This is the time of year when Wyoming is prone to those kind of weather conditions, when you get these sub-zero surges that send temperatures well below zero, and then you get a warm gust of Pacific air, not necessarily wet, so there's not snow, but it warms things up very quickly, and that can create a lot of problems because you can go from negative 27, which was a record-setting low in Sheridan on Wednesday, up to 58 degrees in less than a week. That's an 85-degree swing within that time frame.
The heavy snow and ice that fell during last week's winter storm is rapidly melting. That can cause tremendous issues for home and business owners as they learn how well everything holds up under such extreme conditions. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
Well, here we go again with another very windy day across the Cowboy State. Temperatures will again be very mild, 50s, even some 60s again will be found in the far east and south. But the winds will continue to be very strong. A lot of high wind watches and warnings are going to be in effect through late this evening and early tonight. Now, there is a frontal system helping to make these winds quite strong that may produce later today, overnight tonight, and Wednesday morning a few snow and rain showers on the plains, some snow shower up in the high country activity. That snow shower activity will be possible in the mountains through early tomorrow morning. Then there's kind of a break in the action. Wednesday is going to be a little bit colder behind the front. A little less windy. I didn't say no wind, just less windy on Wednesday. The temperatures actually go back up again for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as another mild patch of Pacific air moves in. Later in the weekend and into the early parts of next week is when we can expect to turn colder and more unsettled again.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
They want to know if we received a relay call before?
Yes, go ahead.
We need to have a party catered.
When you receive a relay call, someone who is deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind, or has a speech disability is calling you. It could be the most important call of the day.
A bill giving Wyoming homeschool parents freedom from submitting curriculum to local school boards will head to Governor Mark Gordon's desk for final approval. The Homeschool Freedom Act, or House Bill 46, was passed on third reading by the Wyoming Senate on Monday by a 28-2 vote. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck spoke to the leader of the Wyoming Homeschool Association, who was celebrating the passage of the bill.
They said they're looking forward to the governor signing the bill. It means that if somebody wants to homeschool in Wyoming, if they're just starting out homeschooling and they don't have any kids in schools, it means that they don't have to contact the local school district at all. They can just start homeschooling their children. But all homeschool parents do not have to notify their local school district annually anymore with a curriculum. They don't have to do that. It was an annual requirement, and now, as of July 1st, if the governor signs a bill, it will go away.
If Gordon signs the bill, the legislation would take effect July 1st in time for the fall school year. A Douglas man who shot his former Green Beret cousin to death after a night of drinking has been sentenced to between 48 and 62 years in prison. 44-year-old Mark Helms killed his cousin, 38-year-old Nicholas Velasquez, on September 13, 2023. At his sentencing, friends characterized Helms as a truthful man, a good friend, and a hard worker, urging the judge to consider Helms' traumas and show mercy. However, Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that Velasquez's loved ones disputed the intensity and merit of Helms' military exploits and said Velasquez was the real hero.
He was trying to make the case that due to his military missions and service, he had too much PTSD and wasn't rationalizing his conduct the night he killed his cousin. Loved ones testified, and their whole vibe was, actually, Nick Velasquez, the victim, was the true hero. Let me tell you about his service as a Green Beret. And so it got into this kind of a layered talk about military service and some of the issues that can follow.
Helms was given 516 days credit for time he already spent in jail, and he was ordered to pay $7,000 in restitution as well. A bill intended to prevent Wyoming's prized trout waters from being mobbed by unregistered out-of-state fishing guides passed the Senate on Monday, a vital step towards Governor Mark Gordon's desk. House Bill 5 would set up guidelines for regulating fishing guides. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that fishing guides on both sides of the Wyoming-Colorado state line have voiced support for the bill.
There's essentially no regulation over guided fishing in Wyoming, and so folks are saying that's pulling a lot of folks that are calling themselves, hey, I'm a fishing guide, coming in from places like Colorado and overcrowding the waters. And I did talk to a guide from Wyoming, and I also talked to a guide from Colorado. They're both all for it. The guy in Colorado said, I jumped through the hoops. I got my certification. I got my permit from the BLM. I think that anybody coming from Colorado should do what I did.
Because some amendments were made in the Senate, the bill will go to concurrence, which is a process for House and Senate members to hammer out the differences before sending it on. And fresh off of being named the NFL Most Valuable Player earlier this month, Buffalo Bills star quarterback Josh Allen is lined for another notable commendation. He was one of 7 former University of Wyoming athletes named Saturday to the UW Intercollegiate Athletics Hall of Fame. Cowboy State Daily's Justin George reports that Allen was one of 7 athletes selected for this year's honor.
There were several athletes, a couple of football players and basketball players and other athletes that were on the list. What's interesting is Josh is the second Buffalo Bill on that roster this year. The second Buffalo Bill that was also picked was John Wendling. He's from Rock Springs and played in about 2003 through 2006 and was a safety. So it's an honor for Josh, but when you look at what he's achieved this year, he's kind of had some big major awards. So when you have the NFL MVP, and he proposed to his fiancée, Hollywood actress Haley Stanfield. So he's on quite a great run here since November.
At UW, Allen threw for 5,066 passing yards and ran for 767 rushing yards. The two-time team captain scored 57 touchdowns, graduated with a bachelor's degree in social science, and was the 7th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the highest a Cowboys player has ever been drafted. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. And you can watch this newscast every day by clicking subscribe on our YouTube channel or listen to us on your favorite podcast app. And remember to drop in on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake Nichols Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.